We all know about the King and Queen of England, but what's a king baby? Let's explore the king baby syndrome on today's Ask a Shrinks. Baby becomes a child who then becomes an adult, and they still try to hold on to control because their childhood, their babyhood felt so out of control. Then we have the king baby syndrome, or also known as the queen baby syndrome, because this can refer to little girls or little boys. So yes, when we feel out of control in our childhood because there's chaos around it, maybe we're a victim of abuse or something, we're out of control. So then as we grow up, we want to control. So we latch onto our needs, our wants. Everything is about us. We're trying to be in control. There's certain characteristics that go along with this. One of them is they can be a real a-hole. They want to be in charge. There's some arrogance there probably. They act very spoiled. They never really seem to grow up. They're a bit narcissistic. This is the king and queen baby. Bow to them. Do what they want. This is what's expected. But remember, now that you're watching this video, it's all related to fear. It's related to childhood trauma. And again, they're trying to control something now as an adult because they felt so out of control as a child. It's a syndrome that's very closely tied into recovery. With being an alcoholic or being a drug addict, anything to do with addiction, it's closely associated. And so you hear this term mentioned a lot at AA meetings, for example. Very typically what happens are king and queen babies grow up and realize, I don't want to feel feelings. Feelings are uncomfortable. And so they gravitate towards drugs or alcohol as a way to repress or numb feelings. It's a syndrome, meaning it's not really diagnosable, but it is a referred to syndrome. There's common threads with it in terms of being a victim of emotional incest, somebody who has traits of narcissism. These things are closely interrelated, but it's worth pointing out some of the subtle differences. And another subtle difference is when they are in recovery, let's say in an NA or AA meetings or in a 30-day in-house rehab or something like that, they're very difficult clients to work with. They don't want to give up their goods, their toys. They don't want to give up their control. They want to cling to the king baby or queen baby idea. So they can be very challenging in terms of the progress they make in recovery, because after all, to move forward, you have to work with your vulnerabilities. You have to be honest about what scares you. You may have to ask for help. You have to rely on others. You have to face their emotional pain and also realize and admit to themselves and others that they've relied on a crutch of some sort of addiction. A specific theme with the king baby syndrome is they want their life to be an ongoing woohoo, it's a party, let's have a good time. But it's all an artificial celebration. It's a put on because they're trying to overcome their childhood emotional pain. And also just the word party implies drugs or alcohol, right? Hey, party time. They will demand everything they want and they probably may get it, and they're not going to give back. It's about what they get. That's what they're after. And you want everybody's attention. Notice me. I'm the king or queen appearing for your event. They're the person where everything's just too hard to do. Here, could you do this for me? I'll be really nice to you for a while if you do this for me. And they find people that do things for them because they don't want to deal with it. They have a hard time making mistakes, and you better not call them out on that. And that's very close to being a narcissist, right? You also have to look for the fact that they may be really good at putting themselves down. There's something wrong with me. But it's an act. You have to pay close attention, because if they can draw you into some sort of sympathy, and if they're focused on what's wrong with me, then it's a way to deflect from what's really going on in here. It's sort of a good manipulation, right? The person is not looking at what's really going on in terms of the control or how needy or empty they are inside, because they're focused on, oh, this poor person, they don't seem to do well in life. And again, if you call them out on something, maybe a mistake they've made, or you're just drawing attention to something else they've done, you may get a temper tantrum. Be careful. There may be some acting out because you're upsetting the king. You're pissing off the queen. So don't you dare do that, because otherwise you'll have an onslaught of a temper tantrum. After all, how could a king baby or a queen baby know how to deal with real feelings? They don't know how. They weren't helped with that as a child in expressing themselves. Everything was chaotic somehow, whatever went on in their own particular life. And they're compensating for that now by acting out all through their adult life. They really don't like authority. Don't go there because they're the king or queen. So there's nobody above them. They're the highest in authority that anybody can get. So any kind of authority figure around them is something to be aware of. And you will notice the constant need for approval, which is all about the emptiness inside. It's all about how there's a huge void there and they're simply compensating for the void. Ultimately, they're never going to feel good enough. They're never quite enough inside, even though people may be heaping praise on them for some reason, but they don't really identify with that because inside they feel like a failure. They've been abandoned somehow. And unless they get some therapy at some point in their life, it'll just go on and on and on all through their life. They're the first one to crack a joke at a party, and they will keep on and on with the party. That's why a lot of people in recovery have to deal with this syndrome. They've ended up struggling with addiction because they're trying to overcome this inner void. So does that sound like good dating material? I think you better be real careful if you notice these traits in somebody and you decide that you want to start seeing them romantically. They're going to make it be all about them and they won't really trust you too much because they only really trust themselves. So you have to ask yourself, does that sound like healthy dating material to you? If it does, then it's time to ask yourself why. Why do I find that attractive? Why do I see that as healthy? And it's a ticking time bomb, so to speak. If you're married to a king baby or queen baby now, or dating somebody like this, you need to force them to start taking responsibility for themselves. What you're doing is setting healthy boundaries for yourself. So this is how we have to work with people who have family members or they're in relationships or they're married to somebody who's a king baby or queen baby. Again, you're not going to change them, so you have to have your own extremely healthy boundaries. Basically, they want to settle down with a caregiver. They want somebody to take care of them on an ongoing basis. So again, if you're attracted to somebody like this, ask yourself why you're attracted to somebody who has those traits. And typically, if you leave when somebody breaks up or ends a marriage with a king baby or queen baby, guess what? It's just time for the next party. Hey, party on the next block. So they go through life creating parties, sometimes literally and symbolically, as a way to not deal with real life. So it's an interesting syndrome. The thing to remember with this particular syndrome is it really leads to issues with alcohol and drugs, and that's specific to this king baby or queen baby syndrome. So I'd love to hear any comments or questions you have. Please leave them below in the comments section. Please subscribe to my mental health YouTube channel if you like these kind of videos. And until next week, this is Brad Shore signing off from Ask a Shrink.